Dundee, renowned in Scotland as the City of Soul, has produced great groups such as the Average White Band and more recently Danny Wilson, brought together and led by Gary Clark. Mike Marr is here, one of Scotland's leading songwriters. An inspiration to them all is one of Britain's great rock and rollers, a man who has been at the hub of the Dundee music scene for over 30 years, a man who still plays to packed houses every week throughout Scotland. That man is Dougie Martin.
Gonna be the kind of man I can be. Yeah, I can be. I'm gonna keep walking right on back to you. Each time I try, you keep saying goodbye. Walking right on back to you. There's nothing you can say can tear me away from you.
He was born in the Fleming Gardens district of Dundee, the sixth child of a family of 7. Over the years, his mother Bella put up many famous guests. Dougie's home was well known amongst musicians as Bella's Roadhouse. Even the evergreen Gary Glitter slept there. There was always a warm welcome for travelling bands. Having been denied music lessons at his local school, Dougie first taught himself to play harmonica. In 1956, he became a T-box bass player in a skiffle group called the Hep Cats. It was here he learnt to play guitar. This is his story.
I think it was a good couple of years before I got what I really wanted, which was an electric guitar. But everybody obviously wanted a good electric guitar. And that was when the band really started to change. We had to, instead of having the T-chest and so on, I think everybody unfortunately started getting rid of the T-chest and started bringing in guitar players who were playing bass, not on a bass guitar, because the bass guitar never arrived for a long time after that. It was virtually playing bass on an ordinary guitar, tuned down a wee bit. And that's, we did that in some of the clubs for quite a long time until the first band would be the Mystery Men, who approached me to come and play with them. And there's lots of progressions in the Mystery Men, but the first one was I went to Perth City Hall, and that was, gee, I'm going to be out of town, this is tremendous. This guy's got a van. The tyres are bad, but he's got a van, you know. So we all went away to Perth, and I didn't know anything about equipment in those days. We went on stage after the local big band, the Earl Blue Stars. They were a big name in those days. And somebody had switched the PA amp off. Well, I didn't know how to switch that on. I just went on and started. We had a false start. And somebody came up and switched it on, and we started again, and I think everybody was laughing, you know, felt really bad. I started again, and the microphone wasn't switched on. Another false start, so I switched it, and then I started to sing a Jimmy Jones song, which was Handyman. And nobody was singing that type of song in those days. It was falsetto sort of intro. That was why Jimmy Jones, I think, made it, because of that sound. But nobody heard it, so I think a bit sympathy and hearing something different, we really went down a bomb. So my first big gig was really great. Smashing.
He's popular with audiences because he's just so good. And the fact that I don't think there's a rock and roll song written that Dougie doesn't know. And if anybody shouts up for a song, Dougie knows it. He can stand up and belt it out and sing it. Because, I mean, after all, who else around here has been around since Eddie Cochran and Gene Vincent? Only Dougie Martin. You know, he knows everything there is to know about rock and roll. That's probably why he's popular with audiences, and he's popular with musicians because he's such a down-to-earth kind of guy. He doesn't have any airs and graces or pretensions about what he does. You know, he'll tell you, I'm a pub singer. That's what I am, you know, and I like it, and it's just, he's there, he's accessible. People can go up and chat to him, have a pint with him after he's been on stage. He's no different from any of them, and musicians appreciate that. They don't like people that put on airs and graces and pose around. So he's popular all round in that respect.
If rock and roll don't give no indication what's going on inside, drive me insane. Yeah, I don't need no heat below my bottom. laid on the floor when the music began. Yeah, I'm doing the rock and roll like it's going out of fashion. Nobody needs to convince me it's not sane. Yeah, when you walk in the discotheque, you find me dancing. I'm locked in church on Sunday singing a song. Pass me my guitar, you hear me playing. But I don't need convincing, it's all wrong. Yeah, it's all wrong. It's all wrong. I don't need convincing, it's all wrong.
Because we suddenly had a guy with transport, we can go anywhere. We were going Inverness, Nairn, Aberdeen, all over the place. And because you look good, you got lots of gigs. And that's when we met up with Johnny Hudson. Johnny Hudson was on the scene, but we thought, he looks good, you know. He looks like Cliff Richard. You know? That's who we are. You're looking for a Cliff Richard figure in those days. So it was the Cliff Richard in the shadows type thing. But Johnny, great showman, really good-looking guy. So we did that for a while, and then, like most bands wanted to do, most bands wanted to go to Germany because they'd heard that that's the place to go and play. And we were fortunate enough to be the first band to get asked to go to Germany. So we were going off to Cologne. Even before we left, there was a good thing in Dundee before we left. There was a bit of interest in the fact that there was a local band going away to Germany. It was something new to the people. And the provost at the time in Dundee gave us a present for the Burgomeister in Cologne to take over to him. I think he gave him something like a curling stone or something like that. But that, we were, you know, we were going away to something, and we felt we were doing something not just for ourselves. This was a leap forward for the Dundee music scene. We met with a guy, Willie Wilson, and the Downbeats. They were an Indonesian type rock band, and that was a real good bit of incentive for us, because we can see we were using the old Vox amps and so on, which were great in their day, but we had the old cheapos and so on. We didn't have money to buy good equipment, and suddenly these guys were sitting there with Fender amps that we'd never ever seen, you know, PAs like you just couldn't buy in Dundee area. No way you could buy these Fender amps and Fender guitars, the whole bit, you know. And we discovered how they did it. They were living on next to nothing and putting all their money into equipment. And it was paying off because they had the best jobs, you know, all over Germany. Now, Hamburg, we'd heard, was the place to be. That was more the music scene, you know, up St. Pauli, where the Star Club, that's where all the big stars went. Ray Charles, he was playing up there. While we were there, probably a dozen in the first month, a dozen big stars that, you know, the people that you wanted to be like, you know, especially Ray Charles, he was the man. And we found that the bands in there was a local band, they were all from England, I think, but they were a resident band, and they were doing material that we'd never heard. There was a guitarist from Glasgow, this guy, he was the first guy we'd ever heard of how to tune a guitar or how to string a guitar. That was the start, I think, of how the Beatles got their sound. It was light gauge guitar strings, you know, do away with the third string and put a real thin string on. And that was the start. It was like you strung your guitar first, second, and then later came on when you can start saying gauges, so many thousand, 8 gauge and so on. But the start was that, and the Beatles had, when they played guitar, you can hear this sort of prong, prong sort of sound that they had in the background, and that was all due to this. It was a change of how, if you listen to the Shadows, it was really a clean guitar sound, but suddenly the Beatles had this plung, almost going out of tune sort of sound as it played, and that was the raw sound that everybody started to go for, you know. Suddenly the echo units went in the bin, and, you know, the winkle pickers were gone, and suddenly you started to hear Otis Redding and James Brown, Lee Dorsey, all that type of material. So everybody, suddenly there was music to do that you wanted to do. It was something really gave you a buzz, you know. So, and when we started to when we did the Top 10 Club, you could hear all the bands doing all that type of music, it was good to hear it. Suddenly, here it is. It's here, you know. So with that set up, although it split up, when we thought back to what we had been doing, we'd worked with way back, you know, in the start of the High Four and so on. We'd backed all these people. The band had consisted of lots of different things. We'd backed Gene Vincent on tour, which was really great times. He was a real nice guy. We backed Gary Glitter when he was Paul Raven. We backed Vince Eager, Robbie Hood, all names that they would bring up from down south. And all these things, we were obviously having to play their material, and that I suppose was within the mixture of what we were doing. You still had the rocky thing from Gary Glitter. We had the softer thing from Ricky Valens, who did Tell Laura I Love Her. We backed him for a long time. So I suppose when that band split up, we couldn't really just start again. So I moved on. I went away to another band and went back to Hamburg with them, which was the Cyclones. That was a Perth band. They were more of a pop band, I suppose, at that time. They were still doing Elvis Presley type things. They had Eve Graham, who became Eve Graham of the Seekers, the New Seekers.
First time I saw Dougie Martin play was in Perth City Hall, I think it was, when he was the only alien member of a Perth band called the Cyclones. He'd taken a break from the High Four to join this band in Perth, which I guess he was in for about a year. And we used to go and watch him. The stunning things he did were like the Roy Orbison songs, like I'm Crying and In Dreams, which he'd sing like 2 octaves higher, and how they just kept going up and up and up. He was the only singer I'd ever heard that could do that, so, you know, we were all mightily impressed, but that was before I actually ever got to know the guy. I met Doogie with the Vikings. I came to live in Dundee and go to art college here, which was one of these sort of brainless ideas that you go to art college because there's nothing else you can do, you know, so it was a way to stay in a band and still kind of do something traditionally useful.
Can you hear me? 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 Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Now, now, hey baby. All right. Oh yeah. The shame. Oh, the shame.
We used to rehearse together at the Pally, which was the place in Dundee at that time, the Top 10 club. And both our bands were managed by Andy Lothian, so consequently we rehearsed in the same place, and we used to start swapping notes musically. We were both into the same kind of music.
Andy Lothian was our manager at that time. He was also the agency, and Andy was the guy who ran the Top 10 club. He really had the music scene going in Dundee. He was the man, really, over here. Although he was linked with Albert Benisi, who was later to become Alex Harvey's management, and Fahili, all these people. They were all tied together. But Andy told us we had a good gig to come back to, so we came back to Dundee, and we'd found some good material. Johnny Hudson had found Skinny Minnie, all these things, and we were to open the Beatles show in Dundee, which was really great. 1963, that was something else. So we opened the show, and we got a chance to talk to the Beatles and so on. That was really good. We enjoyed that. And there we were with our new material. So then Andy Lothian put us on the road again. We were back down Norwich, Leicester, Manchester, Birmingham. He set up a nice wee tour, and we were still Johnny Hudson High Four at this point. But meanwhile, a guy down there, Bram Lowe, he pushed the band, and he worked in conjunction with Andy Lothian to get the band a recording deal. That was on Deccan. That was When My Baby Cries. Now Andy needed a name for the band. He thought the High Four wasn't really within the image. He tried to create a good image for the band, and apparently Andy said to us that one night his wife woke up in the middle of the night. She must have been dreaming about some unfortunate or something, and she said, "Oh, the poor souls." Andy thought, "Yes, that's the name, yeah, the Poor Souls, that sounds great." So we became the Poor Souls, and that was the name that went on to on the first record, and we carried on as the Poor Souls. John Casey was still with the band, Chick Taylor, Johnny Hudson, myself. So we pushed away with that record. It was, I think it was about 40 something in the charts. Jimmy Savile was pushing it every night on Luxembourg. We heard it quite a few times. We heard it on David Jacobs. Quite a lot of people pushing it. So it was nice, you know, to get a bit radio play and so on. And we were doing a show in London, and we had some time off, and we were down in the Ship in Wardour Street where everybody else went, just up the road from the Marquee. And I was talking to Steve Winwood. Steve was telling us how he was doing. Well, he was really, in those days, he was something else. He was a young Ray Charles, if you like, at that time. He really had a great voice, and Give Me Some Lovin' was the song he wrote at that time. And I was chatting away with him and thinking, this is magic, you know. And Steve said, where are you boys going now? You know, we said, we're not doing anything. So he took us down. He says, come on with me, I've got tickets for the concert. And we went down to the Marquee, and it was Stevie Wonder's first show in Britain. And I remember standing there, Steve Winwood standing on one side, and I was leaning on a pillar, and I looked on the other side of the pillar, and John Lennon was leaning on that side of the pillar, and I thought, gee, I've arrived, yeah, it was good. I was moving back to Dundee, and most of the band at the time, being from Glasgow, didn't want to come up here. So it was a case of adding, like Donny came in, Alan Sheridan came in, and we started off Mafia as a four-piece band. And I think it's probably at that time we felt we should have some brass in the band. So then we increased to a seven-piece band. We brought in Alan McGlone, Pete McGlone, and various members over the years up till now. We've been changing guitarists. Kevin Murray has played, and when he's out, Chris Mara played. I think there's probably about 24 guys in Dundee who have played with Mafia at one time or other over the years, and we're still doing it now.
I used to go and see all the bands to check out what was happening, and most of them were punk bands. And I'll never forget when Mafia played. I think it was a Christmas party or something. Just the change was pretty dramatic in the place. The people were on the tables dancing and jumping about and singing, and I was like, wow, this is the real deal, you know. As far as I can remember, I got a phone call saying that Jerry McGrath, who played bass and other vocalist in Mafia, was going on holiday for a fortnight, and would I stand in? And I said, well, Dougie, I don't play bass, you know. He said, oh, you play guitar and you sing, you'll be fine, you know. So in the deep end, and we met round at his manager's place, and we had one afternoon, and there was a gig in the evening, and Dougie gave me the rundown on the history of soul music in an afternoon. You know, I had to learn all these Stax and Motown songs, and then I was still on stage that night. I think it was in Inverness or something. I was still kind of watching his hands and desperately trying to get it right. But so he chucked me right in the deep end there. He's the sort of guy that doesn't put down young musicians. He gets involved with them and helps them out and helps them to move forward, rather than he doesn't get kind of like protective about his thing. He shares it. And the thing about Doogie's music and his voice is that it's not, you know, people talk about soul music, but what we take for soul music now is a kind of homogenized thing. That Dougie Martin's probably got more in common with Hank Williams than he has with what we take for soul music now, you know. It's real, it's rough and it's ready and it's guts. It's like, I suppose it's like Scottish honky-tonk music, you know. And when I say like Hank Williams, it could be the saddest song sung by this guy who 2 seconds ago was hitting you really hard with this really tough song, you know. It's not kind of sweet soul that we think about, white soul, you know. It's the real deal.
I hear them talking about the things that he's done. They say he breaks the women's hearts with just a flick of his tongue. And he says, Julius, Dougie doesn't feel too well. You know he tends to forget. I have a keen sense of smell. I'm only Julius.
That's a song about Dougie Martin's dog, Julius, Old English sheepdog. And we went away for a weekend to Skye, and Dougie told the dog lies before we left. Told him he wasn't going to do a gig at all. He was taking some scouts away camping. And I always felt sorry for the dog. So I wrote that song, Julius. I'd actually heard quite a lot about Dougie Martin before I actually met him. And most of what I heard, it was like his name set the standard for everybody else's work. You know, he was so good. People would say, have you heard so-and-so singing? He's a really good chanter, you know, and somebody else would say, yeah, well, he's all right, but he's no Dougie Martin. Dougie was the actual standard that everybody aimed for. And then it was actually quite a while after that until I saw him, you know, I saw him live. And then another while before I got to play with him. The first time I saw him playing live was with Jim Kelly in the Queen's Hotel in Dundee. And it amazed me that you could walk into a bar in Dundee, pay no money, and hear this music, you know. Very special. It was great.
I'm a stumble down romancer, never made the grade. Never on the dance floor when the music played. I was always moving on when I know I should have stayed. But I never had a love of my own. I'm a stumble down romancer, I dearly love the stage. I saw my name once down on a printed page. Somebody once called me, said he's a rock and roll saint. But I never had a love of my own. And it's hard to be free when a lady there put some moon in her eyes and the stars in her hair. I know I'd never be happy with a fireside chair. That's a hard price to pay. That's a hard price to pay.
So an honesty comes out of his singing, which younger people experience. They know, you know when you're in the presence of the real thing, and when somebody sings properly, you believe them. Well, we've all been very lucky in being able to learn that from Dougie.
I mean, the thing about Dougie is he's not too well known outside Scotland, but you've got to know that the history, he goes way back to rock and roll, right through the soul thing in the 70s, right up to the present day. I mean, it's, you know, that kind of knowledge is just incredible. You know?
Has Dougie Martin influenced my vocal style? Completely. Yeah, I mean, if there's anybody that, put it this way, he was the only guy I really admired that I knew in the flesh. You know, I admired people like Stevie Winwood and Otis Redding and many others from afar. But Dougie was the local guy who was, in a way, like the sort of, he had the voice that I hero worshipped.
I never made the grade. I was never on the dance floor when the music played. I was always moving on when I know I should have stayed. But I never had a love of my own. Yeah, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can change. Nothing new about it. It's always changed. years come and go, but the blues still remain. That's a hard price to pay. That's a hard price to pay. I'm a stumble down romancer. I dearly love the stage. I saw my name once down on a page, and somebody once called me and said he's a rock and roll saint, but I never had a love of my own. No, I never had a love of my own. No, I never had a love of my own.
Well, I hate to count up how long I've played, but must be a number of years now. At present, I play maybe four nights a week, all around the area, maybe close by the surrounding areas, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow occasionally, and I don't think I've got any intention of stopping. I met Sonny Boy Williamson on a gig once, and I really admired the way this guy, he was an old guy, I thought at that time, and he carried on right to the very end, so why can't I do that?
Mm.